I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to get into some of the nuance. And at the end of the day, people may disagree with a decision and be as upset as they were going in. But the objective is to provide a little bit more context about how we landed where we did, which was a place that was unthinkable for a lot of people, and came out of nowhere. And so I think that you said, I'm shook. Like, definitely, this has been. It's painful to cause disruption and hurt among people who you really respect and admire.
On June 9 and 10 this year, our live online workshop, Biochar for Farming, is happening in English and Spanish with returning specialist professors Angela Barrero and Morillo Bettarello. Tickets are $10 for farmers and $100 for everybody else, which includes 9 pay-it-forward tickets for farmers who can't pay the ticket price. Head to mapitforward.coffee/workshops or check the show notes for links. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series on the Daily Coffee Pro. We are talking to Michael Sheridan from the CQI. This is a highly anticipated series. Welcome to the podcast for the first time, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Lee. I appreciate it.
So I want to say something to you. I think that you being here is a deep mark of respect for our industry, and it shows a lot of courage. I can't imagine that the last few weeks have been easy for you, and we're going to get into that in a second. But I do want to start this whole conversation by saying exceptional people doing hard things don't shy away from hard conversations. And you coming on the podcast to have this conversation with me is a mark of you having the courage to have a hard conversation. And so I'm deeply grateful for that. And I hope that people out there will give this conversation the grace that it deserves. You and I don't know each other before. We had a preliminary conversation yesterday. That's the first time we've had a conversation. And I'm grateful that we had that conversation. It gave me some context that I didn't have for a few things. But we're going to have a hard conversation. And I'm grateful that you're showing up for it. To be clear, to let everybody know, Yanis has been invited. Last week, I reached out to Yanis on WhatsApp to invite him onto the podcast. He has read the message but has not answered. So I reached out to Michael, and rather immediately, Michael said yes. Whatever you think of what's happened with the CQI and the SCA and with the Q and all of that, showing up when it's hard to have a conversation deserves the brownie points that are owed to it. So that's where I want to start people's frame of reference for this conversation. To say that I'm angry about what's happened, I know you've watched the series with Tim. I know that you are well aware of my position about all of this, Michael. In this series, we're talking about the changes at CQI. And I guess we start the conversation with me asking you, how have the last couple of months been for you?
Well, let me just say, first of all, to your intro, thank you. I appreciate that. We'll take the brownie points, but I think it was the hardest decision I was involved in my career, and there isn't a close second. And we knew that there was going to be a lot of disruption as a result. So I think that's part of the job, is showing up for the difficult conversations, even when they're not fun, or especially when they're not fun. So, that's why I'm here. I think, obviously the last couple of months have been intense, difficult, laced with excitement about the future of CQI and our ability to deliver on our mission, but a lot of work, very difficult, and also exhilarating in some ways. So I know we'll get into it in some detail, but I think the sort of the motivations for those different kind of conflicting feelings, I think, will come out in the conversation.
Great. A lot of people will feel a lot of ways about even hearing that you feel exhilarated. And folks, I can tell you that from my preliminary conversation with Michael, there is one thing that I want everybody to take from my experience in my conversation with Michael yesterday. Michael cares about coffee and coffee producers. That is unquestionable. And I believe that Michael cares deeply about the whole coffee industry. But if I understood our conversation correctly yesterday, Michael, you have a deep passion for development work and for the success of coffee producers. Am I understanding that correctly?
100%, crystal clear. I asked you yesterday about your path into coffee, and I love to ask people I meet in the coffee industry that question because the stories are amazing, and people come into coffee from so many different angles and perspectives. I think the most common path that I've encountered in those conversations is people walking through the front door, literally, of a coffee shop, and becoming baristas, and then going down the wormhole and understanding there's a whole world, this amazing world of coffee. And I often say that I came into coffee through the back door, like a salmon swimming upstream in the supply stream from my work in international development. So I studied international development, economics, and started working for an organization called Catholic Relief Services right out of graduate school, and was doing development work. I was a coffee addict, but no sort of coffee background. And I was doing that work for CRS during what we used to just call the price crisis. Now I'm calling like the 1999 to 2006 price crisis because they're structural and recurring in our trade. But that was a time at which a lot of development organizations like mine moved very quickly into the fair trade space. I worked for a U.S.-based organization. If I remember correctly, fair trade certification entered the U.S. market in 1999, and it was seized on as an important part of the response to the coffee crisis. I have been in coffee ever since, more than 20 years. Initially, it was just sort of by chance that I wound up working in coffee, and then later very much by design. So I spent 4 years leading our fair trade program out of our headquarters in the United States, then 4 years in Guatemala, leading coffee work in Mexico and Central America with thousands of smallholders. A couple of other smaller projects related to that, and then relocated to South America to lead a 5-year project in Ecuador and Colombia called the Borderlands Coffee Project. And all along was writing about the work in a blog called the Coffee Lands blog, the CRS Coffee Lands blog. And all of it was motivated by the idea of growers trying to help growers achieve better outcomes through the coffee trade, trying to unlock the developmental promise of coffee. Coffee is a laboratory for social innovation and inclusion. I did the 4 years of work at our headquarters, then I relocated to Guatemala. I was actually not in a coffee role. I was the regional advisor for livelihood, so it was all things. And I immediately got working on a coffee proposal, and I was confronted at one point by my supervisor. She said, "Hey, just because you love coffee doesn't mean you get to work on it all the time." I said, "Totally, like guilty as charged, but also like you don't understand. Coffee's a lab, and coffee's doing things that are getting picked up by other sectors in the food and beverage industry, and we want to be kind of on the bleeding edge of innovation and leveraging all of those market forces that are supporting innovation, quality, certification. We want to be in there to try to understand what the levers are that we can pull to try to help growers achieve better outcomes in the market." And so very early in this work, I came to the understanding that quality is the best strategy for smallholder growers. As a standalone single strategy, in my experience, there's no better approach than quality-based differentiation to hedge risk and seize opportunity in the market. And that became the basis of the work that I did for CRS for 12 and a half years. I then went to Intelligentsia to lead the green coffee sourcing. I lead green coffee sourcing at Intelligentsia. And, when I was doing my job well, I was helping the company meet its targets, its financial targets, but also waking up every day thinking, how can I structure our relationships with our suppliers in ways that hedge risk and create more opportunity for them. And it's really why I was so excited. Like CQI, the opportunity to lead CQI was a dream job, because I've spent my career at the intersection of coffee quality and international development. And that's the space that CQI occupies. And CQI's mission is to improve the quality of coffee in the lives of people who produce it. And there's two parts to that mission, right? There's quality improvement and livelihood improvement, and they're linked. And the mechanism for livelihood improvement is quality improvement. So that idea of quality being an agent of change, quality being an agent of development, is embedded in our mission. And for me, it was a dream job to be able to come to an organization that explicitly says we are all about trying to help growers leverage quality to achieve better, to have better lives. So yes, for 20 plus years, I've been engaged with smallholder farmers and quality, and trying to figure out, ways that we could use quality to help growers achieve better outcomes. And I mentioned to you yesterday, the longer I work in coffee, the more I see things through the lens of risk. And right now we have no shortage of sources of risk for producers. And I think quality, I worked at Intelligentsia, which is, one of the world's pioneering direct trade roasters, source and serve some of the world's best coffees. We got very excited about 89-point coffees and 92-point micro lots. And that is quality for sure. And that's seizing opportunities at the highest levels of quality. But quality isn't just about nano lots. Quality is in many ways also about, macro lots and high-end commercial lots and achieving consistency and reducing rejections. And a lot of quality is about risk mitigation. So I'm going to stop because, we could do the whole 5 episodes just on this. It's been 20 years of work in there. But short answer to your question, yes, I'm very interested in coffee farmers and coffee farmer, the Center of Living for Coffee Farmers.
The thing that I have taken from the last few weeks since the announcement was made that, and folks, for those of you that are listening, we are going to talk about all the things that you want us to talk about. We are not going to miss anything. We're going to talk about the CVA and the Q. We're going to talk about the SCA and the CQI. We're going to talk about your reactions. We're going to talk about everything. Michael is shying away from none of it. So what we are intending as we move through this series is to lay a path that helps us understand how the CQI came to the decision that they came to. I don't understand it, but this conversation is so that I and we can. And I would hazard a guess that there is nothing really black and white about this. I am suspecting from the conversation that we had yesterday that there's a lot of people out there that are saying things like, oh, Michael Sheridan threw us under the bus, he fucked us over and blah, 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 blah. He doesn't give a shit about us. He just cares about himself. And did he get any money under the table? And did Yanis get any money under the table? And blah, 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 blah. I suspect, and I know for certain one thing, you are shook by this. The response that there is I definitely took away from our conversation yesterday that you are not sitting there thinking, well, fuck everybody. I don't care what their reaction is. I don't care how this has impacted them. You said in no uncertain terms to me yesterday that you care about everything that's being said, a lot of what's being said. We are going to talk about that. Not in this episode, but I want everybody to know you should listen to this whole series because of the complexity of the subject. Okay, so bear with us as we try and do this in a very intelligent way and a very thoughtful and considered way that is considerate to the CQI as well as being considerate to the people listening to this series. Okay, this is complicated. Go ahead, Mike. What were you going to say?
No, you're a pro. I love it. I'm very grateful for the framing, and I think you're making me think of a quotation that I love, and if I love it so much, I should remember where it comes from. But it's the idea of distrusting simplicity, except for the simplicity that lies on the far side of complexity. So the way you laid it out is, that there's nuance here, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to get into some of the nuance. And at the end of the day, people may disagree with a decision and be as upset as they were going in, but the objective is to provide a little bit more context about how we landed where we did, which was a place that was unthinkable for a lot of people, and came out of nowhere. And so I think that you said, I'm shook. Like, definitely, this has been. It's painful to cause disruption and hurt among people who you really respect and admire. And I think of the CQI community and our instructors and assistant instructors and Q graders as like the all-stars of coffee. I sometimes think of like young players who are rookies and breaking into the professional ranks, and they're playing against their childhood idols. It's like the names of people in the CQI instructor ranks are the people who, when I was first breaking into coffee 20 years ago, I would read anything they would write and try to hear from them. So people who you admire, to cause them pain is awful. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that even though this is a painful subject for you, that you are coming on and having this conversation. You mentioned the mission of the CQI. Yeah. Could you say again what that mission is?
Yeah, I'd love to spend a little time talking about it because I think it is important context for the later discussions. The mission is to improve the quality of coffee and the lives of the people who produce it. And how have we done that? I want to talk a little bit about how we've done that over the years. I think most importantly, we have done that through our contribution to the creation of a common language of coffee quality. And the preeminent tool in that work has been the Q. It's the thing for which we're most known. And I think remarkably, we have largely succeeded in that. I've been in coffee 20 plus years. And for me, if it's not the single biggest development in that time or innovation in that time, it's one of maybe the two or three biggest innovations, I think, and achievements of the coffee sector during that time. And it's helped facilitate the trade in quality differentiated coffee. It's made it possible because people are aligned enough in their vocabulary, aligned enough in their standards, aligned enough in their scoring, and their understanding of what constitutes coffee quality and what constitutes not quality, that contracts can be made and trade can happen. But the important part for CQI is that is the important part, right? But there is an important empowerment factor in there, or empowerment play. And if you're old like me, you might remember a book that was published many, many years ago called The Coffee Cuppers Manifesto. And it was published by a small coffee roaster in Northern California with revolutionary ideals called Thanksgiving Coffee. And it was based on work that was done with actual ex-revolutionaries in Nicaragua, in Nicaraguan coffee cooperatives. And it had that, very Che Guevara title of the Coffee Cuppers Manifesto. And it was very much about the empowerment play that's at the core of what CQI has been doing from a development perspective all these years, which is helping growers develop the same vocabulary as buyers. So buyers and sellers are participate as equals. Producers who are able to cup, are Q graded, and are able to engage in those conversations literally take a seat at the table where price discovery discussions are happening in a way that didn't used to happen. And that is revolutionary. And I've seen that happen around the world. And when I was at CRS, we built that work into our projects. And in the last project I did in Southern Colombia, we were working with 1,600 smallholder farming families. And we did a baseline survey, and it said something like 2% had ever received a premium for cup quality and 3% had ever met a buyer or something like that. And in that context, we helped to train the children of producers to become coffee cuppers. And I watched these people lead cupping tables with Intelligentsia, Stumptown, Counterculture, Keurig, Atlas, like major players, and run cupping tables and represent their coffees in their communities for the market. And there have been over 100 containers now since that project started, sold. And it's really hard to imagine it would have happened without that that empowerment, that training of somebody who can run a table, represent the coffees, engaged with the market in the language of the market. That's been so central to how we have advanced and served our mission over the last 20 years. Since 2018, we have two programs, and the other one is in post-harvest processing. That's been around since the first full year was 2018. And that one is, like the Q, is also a science-based approach to post-harvest processing. I'm personally very excited about it because I think it has a very unique potential to help us achieve our mission, particularly the quality improvement part of the mission. In my experience, cupping is about identifying quality, characterizing quality, representing coffees to the market. There are, I think, relatively few cuppers who are able to take what they are tasting on the cupping table and turn around and generate actionable farm level advice about how to improve quality. So there's in contrast, post-harvest processing is, putting your thumb on the scale of quality, affecting the formation of flavor, reducing the incidence of defects. And so there's kind of a direct, there's sort of like, it's like a main line to quality in a way that it's a little less direct in the QE program around the Q. And I think it is a program whose time has come. I mean, my first travels after COVID were in 2022. I went back to Peru and Colombia, and I felt like Rip Van Winkle, like I'd been asleep I thought, I've been in Chicago for 2 years, but there's been like a century of innovation here in terms of what's happening in post-harvest processing. And it wasn't even necessarily promoted. Intellia's famously favors washed coffees and is not a huge fan of all the funky processing. And we had a lot of partners who shared our perspective, and they would actively discourage people from doing this. And they would be getting, double fermented, extended anaerobic, infused coffees because people have phones. And during COVID, they were just improvising. And so I feel like now more than ever, that idea of a common language that we've applied for 20 years to quality, there's a need for it in post-harvest processing for us to level set on what's actually happening at the mill and to create a common language around post-harvest processing in a way that we've helped to do that around cupping. There's another thing that I think is cool about post-harvest processing is it flips the script a little bit. There is this market. One of the other things that I think has been so exciting about in the last 20 years in coffee, along with what we've helped achieve through the Q, is the blurring of the lines between producing and consuming countries and the emergence of dynamic markets for quality coffee in the places where coffee is produced. That's incredibly exciting. But in the kind of old paradigm, there was this sort of colonial north-south thing where it was like the cuppers and the buyers were training producers. And post-harvest processing is totally different because it's content that's being produced and consumed at origin by people who produce coffee and process coffee. And I think that's a really exciting difference. And increasingly, I think there's need for sort of south to north education where producers are helping the industry understand people who are coming to some of these terms and processes for the first time. So those are the ways that we try to advance that mission of quality improvement. And we have there are really three mechanisms, three ways we can deliver those trainings, but most of the work that we've done has been through two mechanisms, and the main one is private markets. And so this is the ecosystem that CQI has created over 20 years around the Q with instructors and assistant instructors, Q venues, and learners who become Q graders. Instructors will list courses on the CQI website. Learners will go and enroll in them. They'll pay the instructors. CQI gets a royalty or a licensing fee from each student. But that is a private activity that's happening and being led by CQI instructors who are effectively consultants for CQI. Most people get the Q in that way, but not most people in the places where coffee is grown.
I have a question. If that's sorry, I just need to interrupt that question there. Who decided that you guys get to decide what quality is? Like it started 20 years ago, right? Who decided that CQI was like? How did that come about?
I will do my best. I was doing something different at the time. CQI grew out of, I think grew out of SCA. It was
no, I didn't know that.
We're part of the same family tree. We're sister organizations, and CQI was born out of a meeting. It was an idea in a meeting of the long-term planning committee that had this kind of moment where they said, hey, we have this disconnect where most people at Origin, when they talk about quality, are talking about physical quality. And most of us here are cupping and talking about sensory quality. And we would really be well served as a trade if we could have a common language where we all understand each other. And in 1996, CQI was created as an independent organization to pursue that based on emerging standards. And then in 2004, when the cupping form was issued, and that standard was issued by SCAA, that became the basis of the training. So the Q is a scaffolding that's been built around that approach that emerged. So in the early years, 96 to 2004, CQI had different kind of different focuses, did different kinds of work, but ultimately settled on the work that as the Q. And so it grew out of that ferment of this idea of trying to create a common language. How do we do that? When the 2004 standard was issued, that became the basis for that training. So that was the group that made the decision to try to create some efficiency in the trade. And for some people like CQI or Thanksgiving Coffee, there was a focus on the empowerment piece of that. So common language only works when it's actually common and it's spoken by everyone. If it's only spoken in the market, then it's a weapon. It can't empower and it can't facilitate. So I think people who are present at the creation, you should get other perspectives on that because mine is limited.
I completely get it.
History student,
but that doesn't answer my question. Like I appreciate it sort of half answers the question, because if you're saying that we need common language, and I agree that the problem that the CQI and the SCA tried to solve with what we're going to talk about in the next episode, it's a real problem. We need unified language around how to talk about quality. But my question is, who's defining the genesis of what quality is? And it seems as though from the history that you've been talking about, that the CQI is setting the standard for what quality is and how it's talked about in the industry. And what is the legitimacy? And this is not like a trap question or anything. I'm genuinely curious, because you said that you guys have decided that funky is like not a thing. You prefer...
No, that was intelligentsia. That was
intelligentsia. That doesn't fucking surprise me at all. And to this day, I am angry about that. But when the people who are deciding what these things are are the one, and also issuing certificates and things like that. What I'm trying to understand is, if we're talking about how to define quality, and then we're going out and teaching how to define quality, who's getting to decide what the rules of that quality are and the guidelines of what quality are?
Yeah. This is an SCA standard, or SCAA standard, the 2004 standard, and the SCA is a standard setter. That's one of its roles in the coffee ecosystem. So they set the 2004 standard on which we built out the queue, and they've set the standard for the CVA, which will be the future of the queue.
Okay. Perfect break point for our next episode, because what we are going to talk about is in the next episode is we're going to start the juiciness of the conversation that you all want. This needed to be a foundational episode so that we could lead into that and we could have some clarity on what the role of the CQI is. In the next episode, we're going to talk about the SCA agreement and the Q transition. So join us for the next episode, folks. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. This episode is part of a 5-part series produced by Mapper Forward. Check the full playlist and guest details in the show notes, as well as how you can support our work in the coffee industry. Become a premium YouTube subscriber, explore our Patreon and any brands we've partnered with to bring you this podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does help us grow our audience.